Next presenter, which is who is Pattarapong Kongwattana from the Faculty of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Kasetsart University, Thailand. This is interesting. I need to go and find this book actually. SF and Sympoiesis, Thinking in the Man with the Compound Eyes by Ming-Yi. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, for introducing me. Do you hear me? No. Yes. Right. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. Yes. My name is Pattarapong, and good afternoon from Taiwan, because I'm now living in Taiwan, and I'm a PhD candidate in Taiwan and Transcultural Study at National Zhongxing University in Taiwan. And today I'm humbled to present my paper in the topic of SF and Sympoiesis, Thinking in the Man with the Compound Eye, the novel by Ming-Yi. First of all, let me introduce the reason why I choose the novel. Since we are facing environmental problem, environmental destruction, also the pandemic, we have to admit that we are living in an epoch of the Anthropocene. I'm not sure that everyone have ever heard about this word, but the Anthropocene means refer to an era that humans as a real geological force, that the activity of human will affect other non-human beings, such as animals, such as a non-human environment, and even our own ecology. And to deal with such problem from liberal arts perspective, we need to find a creative practice or creative art or creative literature or films that is able to undermine the anthropocentric thinking that we think that human as the center of the universe, and to help us realize the environmental problems. And in this context, I find that The Man with the Compound Eyes, in Chinese 复眼人, which is his first novel that translated in English, will be the example of the novel that concern the problem of the Anthropocene. The material and method, this paper applied the comparative literature to analyze the novel, since the storytelling combined with sci-fi, climate change, environmentalism, the concept of SF from Donna Haraway is applied to examine Ming-Yi's narrative. The objective of this study is to examine how his SF differs from the mainstream sci-fi, and to discuss who uses the Trash Vortex as an implication of SF, and what is SF in Donna Haraway's sense. Some might be doubtful about that. Let's begin with the general idea of SF. SF normally refer to science fiction, such as that related to high technology, such as space odyssey, humanoid, cloning, aliens, and most of the time is portray human arrogance. It's portrayed that human as a center of the universe. For example, Avatar from James Cameron, we are fighting a colony planet, but for Haraway, Haraway proposed an SF storytelling in order to challenge the anthropocentric thinking. In her view, SF is not an abbreviation for sci-fi, but is an interdisciplinary term that includes many possibilities and entanglement. In Haraway's own words, SF is a sign for science fiction, speculative feminism, science fantasy, speculative fabulation, science fact, and also string figures. This kind of entangled narrative is able to emphasize the complexity of the Earth system and to call us for rethinking about human and non-human relations. Another term that would mention in this paper is slow violence. The term is coined by Rob Nixon. Slow violence generally are those casualties most likely not to be seen and not to be counted because its impacts are too slow, so that everyone is neglected. For example, air pollution, right? Or maybe not a COVID vaccine gonna be our slow violence, maybe. And let's come to the, before getting into the discussion, I would like to offer the synopsis of the novel. The main plot of the novel focuses on two characters, Atale and Alice. Atale is the boy from Wayo tribe who live on an isolated island, which is an imaginative island. But Atale must sail his boat out of his island, but his boat sinks and he has to swim into an island. And he realized that the island that he swim to is a trash vortex, a giant trash island. And the current have brought the vortex and Atale to Taiwan, where Alice and Atale are encountering each other. And then the story leads to the exchanges between the two cultures from their through their different language learning. In case that you cannot imagine what garbage patch or garbage vortex may look like, here is the picture of the trash vortex. And the trash vortex is real. It's not just in the novel. It really exists in our reality, and it takes more than 30 years to form such a giant patch floating around the Pacific Oceans. But in Wu's version of his imaginative version is more solid, like an island that can hit the shore of Taiwan. Here is my discussion. First of all, from the macro perspective, I find that Wu reversed the pattern of general sci-fi. In terms of the mainstream sci-fi, I'm sure that everyone have watched a lot of movies, and the pattern gonna be like this. The pattern tend to resolve conflict, right? Resolve conflict to protect human from, most of the time is sudden event, sudden disaster, volcano. For example, destroying meteorites that coming to hit the earth, or eliminate the alien species, and then bring human back to normal state. I don't say that every movie will be like this, but most of the time mainstream sci-fi would be like tend to portray the sudden event or sudden catastrophe. But applying Haraway's SF, I find that Wu rather points to the slow violence, as I mentioned, which opposing to the mainstream sci-fi. In the novel, as I mentioned, the trash vortex is the embodiment of slow violence because the vortex has takes more than 30 years to take shape, but it has been neglected by many countries. And actually, the trash vortex comes from many countries in the world, including Thailand, as the novel portrays. The formation of the vortex is too slow so that humans are not aware of its harmfulness. In other words, the vortex itself is ironized as a man-made slow violence that cannot be solved by humans. Actually, it's built on our own object, right? in this regard, Wu calls for attention to the Earth system rather than the violence from outer space as general SF always does. As a result, the vortex is an implication of SF in terms of being an intertanglement of scientific fact and fantasy to realize the slow emergence of environmental destruction. And also Ming-Yi also uses the coming of the vortex as a string figure. It's also the abbreviation can be SF as well, to provoke the reconciliation with nature. Most prominent example in the novel is the character Hafe, who is a Panka people. What is Panka? Panka is an indigenous tribe in Taiwan that their life is connected with the sea, the ocean, and the sea culture. But as for Hafe, her Panka indigenous instinct that originally connect to the sea culture has been lost. Why? Because she has to manage herself to survive in the domination of Han Chinese society in Taiwan and also dominated by capitalist society in Taiwan as well. And according to the passage above, it shows that the coming of the vortex has reawakened her Panka instinct. We could say that the vortex is an intangible object to invoke the ecological consciousness and the connection to nature that had been lost by living in modern society. And in conclusion, Haraway's concept of SF has expanded the sci-fi interpretation of Ming-Yi, the man with the compound eye. The concept demonstrates that Wu's SF helped provoke humanistic and ecological concern. It shows that his narrative achieved the resurgence for humans and nature with implication of his Trash Vortex. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Like I said, I need to go and find this book because first of all, I find it very intriguing because it jives in with the current narrative of sustainable development goals, obviously. Was that what attracted you to analyze this,
yes,
to work on this for your PhD?
It's part of my project. It's part of my thesis.
Right, it's for your PhD thesis. Right. So this is very interesting. In fact, I read your article, and there was a bit that talks about Wu's mountain and forest in the novel acting as quasi-active agents that humans must listen to. and it's interesting, as I was reading this, and I wonder if Wu has actually reflected on human nature. I'll tell you why. When I was little, I was told, we used to go to the sea a lot, to the beach. And my parents would tell me to don't go so near to the water, because if you look long enough or stare long enough into the water, you will actually hear the water calling you in. So, when I read your article on this particular part, I thought, well, this idea of nature or us having to listen to non-humans. Would that be a similar thing, or I'm just talking rubbish?
Obviously, it's similar thing. Is his background is it's believed that our extinction is connected with nature, but because our technology that separate culture and nature, right?
Right.
So
that, yeah.
we try to portray that actually humans are nature, and nature is, the boundary is blurred. There is no boundary between humans and nature. And
Right.
and he takes indigenous peoples as to voice the and to give an example of how human and nature are connected. And
Mm.
mhm. and and I appreciate the novel because is shows a lot of Taiwanese elements in the novel.
Right.
Because,
Right.
for example, in Taiwan, there is a lot of indigenous tribes, and there a lot of tribes have different culture and different way to connect it with nature.
Right.
And the novel, but I didn't mention here, but in the novel there is a lot of example that how humans are co-evolve with nature.
Right. No,
And your
that's very,
example is valid too. Is similar to those example in the novel that sometimes nature is calling us.
right, right. I think it's very interesting, and I wanted to touch on, or to suggest to you that to link with indigenous practices, because I'm sure underlying Wu's work would be his reference, if you like, to indigenous practices. That he must have experienced through at one point in time. And you just now talk about the intervention, if you like, of technology. Can I share with you another example that, as you were talking, I thought about it. When I was little, sometimes I would go and spend the night with my grandmother, and she did not have an alarm clock. She did not have an alarm clock, but she taught me this: all you need to do is to pat on the pillow and kind of like tell the pillow, I want to wake up at 5 tomorrow morning. And lo and behold, she wakes up at 5 the next morning. So I'm sure it's not the pillow that's doing that, but it's the nature, the whole psyche of believing or something like that. So I don't know. Again, my example may just go off tangent, but it's something that I'm thinking about.
It's valid as well. Many scholars has pointed out before that actually non-human is also an actant as well. It's an actor. It has a power. It normally we let me put this way. Normally we think that humans will be autopoiesis. We can live our own. We are the center of everything. But actually we are living with, we are co-evolve with other non-human as well. For example, the pets, the dog, we are raising with them, and for non-human, for example, for the bacteria in our intestine will even affect our behavior. It even affect our emotion. Maybe today my emotion is not right because it's not because me, because the intestine that didn't work properly.
Yes.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any question amongst the audience? Well, this is very eye-opening, and I certainly need to go and get that novel. And we wish you the best of luck for your PhD work. And I'm sure it's going to come out great. Well done for your presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much.